What if the compassionate Tanjiro Kamado was the first one transformed into a demon, while his gentle sister Nezuko became the Demon Slayer? Today we're exploring this complete role reversal that would fundamentally transform Demon Slayer's entire story from beginning to end. By the conclusion, you'll understand exactly why this swap creates an entirely different narrative, with shocking twists and emotional stakes that hit even harder than the original. We can start by looking at what makes this role reversal so radically different from the original story. The initial character of Nezuko as a human being was a kind and caring girl who considered others first even before herself, just like her elder brother Tanjiro. She was also a good elder sister who frequently took the interest of her younger siblings and prioritized them over herself. The situation changes entirely when Muzan attacks the Kamado family and Tanjiro remains at home, whereas Nezuko goes to town. She comes back to discover that her family is massacred, with only Tanjiro alive. However, he's now a demon transformed by Muzan himself. The shock of knowing that her beloved older brother is a demon would destroy Nezuko in a different way compared to Tanjiro. Whereas Tanjiro was able to convert grief into determination, Nezuko would first be reduced to paralysis due to the despondent feeling of guilt. She would accuse herself of abandoning him in this situation when she was alone, when she was not available to save her family when they needed her the most. This is where the original nature of Demon Tanjiro would make the first huge break of the story. Tanjiro is popularly considered to be a kind and soft-hearted man, who has warm and kind eyes that attract people's attention. His sympathy and understanding of the human beings and demons alike depict his inbuilt capacity to relate with people at a profound emotional level. These fundamental characteristics, even in the form of a demon, would show themselves in new and unimaginable forms that would shock the world. Gyuto Miyoka sees something that doesn't meet his expectations of demons when he comes across them. Demon Tanjiro does not strike his sister. He's on the offensive to save Nezuko against his inner demonic desires. The innately acquired skills go to the extent of enabling him to outwit his competitors, even when he was struggling against his hunger. Tanjiro would be fully cognizant and mindful of his transformation as compared to Nezuko, who returned to the childish state. This awareness makes him feel all horror, all bloodlust, all the instincts that scream at him to consume human beings. The mental torture would be enormous, yet his strength of will and determination would enable him to fight back all the way. And speaking of willpower, wait until you hear how Demon Tanjiro's abilities would manifest completely differently. Instead of Nezuko's pyrokinesis blood demon art that creates pink flames, Tanjiro would develop something far more unique. Given his family's connection to sun breathing and Hinokami Kagura, his blood demon art would manifest as golden purifying flames. These flames wouldn't just burn demons, they would actually cleanse demonic corruption and potentially weaken Muzan's curse. This would make Tanjiro the first demon in history whose powers actively oppose the Demon King's control. Muzan would immediately sense this aberration and become obsessed with either killing or controlling Tanjiro. The Demon King would see Tanjiro as a threat to his existence unlike any he'd seen in a century. This is where the adventure of Nezuko as a demon slayer is interesting and heartrending. They would be taken by Orokodaki, but training would be totally different than what Tanjiro originally experienced. Nezuko doesn't possess the intuition of natural combat or the ability to think tactically as her brother does. Where Tanjiro was able to master water-breathing techniques and strategies rather quickly, Nezuko would not fare that well with the technical side of it. She would be persevering, but the learning curve would be steep and frustrating. Nevertheless, Nezuko has strong points that would manifest themselves in other places. Her protective nature with Tanjiro would be a near combat fanaticism. She would become a more violent, frontal combatant, and contrast with Tanjiro's flowing style. All her swings with the blade would be full of desperation to rescue her brother. The relationship between Demon Tanjiro and Demon Slayer Nezuko would be a heart-shattering one to look upon. During his starvation with his bamboo muzzle, Tanjiro would attempt to reassure Nezuko with muted words and actions. His selflessness would persist through transformation, constantly putting her well-being above his own suffering. Unlike Nezuko, who could sleep peacefully in her box, Tanjiro would remain fully conscious every moment. He'd experience complete awareness of his demonic condition, unable to properly communicate, watching Nezuko risk her life repeatedly. The fact that he's the cause of his sister's struggling will eat him up, but he would never give up in helping her. However, here is the key distinction that alters everything about their talents. The super sense of smell that Tanjiro had would turn into a horror as a demon. He could detect human blood and presence from miles away with agonizing clarity. Every human Tanjiro encountered would smell delicious to him, yet he'd never waver in his resolve to protect them. This constant torture would make his journey infinitely more painful than Nezuko's peaceful sleep-based recovery. His combat support would be limited by his own moral restraints. He'd refuse to fully embrace his demon powers. Now let's examine how major battles would unfold completely differently with this role reversal. Nezuko wouldn't be able to fight against the Temple Demon without the swift thinking and planning of Tanjiro. She would not depend on smart strategies and would act upon pure will and fierce assaults. Demon Tanjiro would attempt to help, but he could only do so with limited ability, as each moment threatened losing control. Without Tanjiro using his fighting instincts, the fight would have been much more desperate and dangerous. The team dynamic would change drastically when they encounter Zenitsu and Inosuke. As compared to Tanjiro, Nezuko is unable to take the initiative to connect with people through her kind heart. Zenitsu would not have fallen in love with Nezuko, as she's a human being, and rather he would be too scared of the demon Tanjiro. Without Tanjiro to calm him down, Inosuke would be even more savage and unmanageable. The friendships of these three would be made of struggle and adversity, and not by nature. There would be a crucial turning point in the fight on Mount Nanagumo against Rui. On the verge of being killed by Rui's threads, Demon Tanjiro would finally use his complete power. However, Tanjiro's awakening would be orderly and intentional as opposed to the berserk transformation of Nezuko. His demon shape would be with one horn, though his eyes would still be with their sympathetic expression. The golden purifying flames would explode from his body, burning away Rui's threads without harming any humans. This would be the moment Tanjiro's unique blood demon art fully awakens. Rui himself would be shocked as Tanjiro's flames burn away the false family bonds created by Muzan's curse. For the first time in centuries, Rui would feel his demonic connection weakening. In his final moments, Rui would experience clarity and remember his real human family. Tanjiro's compassion would extend even to his demon enemies, granting them peaceful deaths through his purifying flames. But here's where the story takes its darkest turn: the Hashira's reaction to Demon Tanjiro. The Hashira meeting would be exponentially more hostile than their response to Nezuko. A fully conscious male demon who can communicate and fight would be seen as infinitely more dangerous. Sanemi would be absolutely merciless, like attempting to immediately execute Tanjiro without hesitation. Even Gyu's protection might not be sufficient enough to save Tanjiro from the Hashira's unanimous condemnation. Nezuko would have to fight far harder to prove Tanjiro's worth and humanity to the core. Her passionate defense would lack Tanjiro's eloquent reasoning, making her case more difficult to argue. Perhaps Tanjiro would willingly endure torture to prove his control and commitment to protecting humans. This trial by suffering would be infinitely more brutal than anything Nezuko faced in the original timeline. The Entertainment District arc would showcase how much Nezuko has grown as both a fighter and a leader. By this point, she'd have developed her own distinct fighting style separate from water breathing. Her techniques would be more direct and powerful, lacking Tanjiro's flowing grace but possessing raw determination. Against Daki, Nezuko would initially struggle without her brother's analytical skills to identify weaknesses, but Demon Tanjiro's assistance would prove invaluable in a completely unexpected way. His purifying golden flames would temporarily weaken Daki, making her vulnerable to Nezuko's attacks. The visual contrast would be stunning: Daki's pink flames versus Tanjiro's golden purifying fire. When Gyutaro emerges, Tanjiro would face the most agonizing choice in his demon existence: use his full power and risk losing his humanity forever, or watch Nezuko die. His decision to transform would be one of the series' most emotionally powerful moments. Fully awakened Demon Tanjiro would possess speed and strength rivaling Upper Moon's, but his fighting style wouldn't rely on demon savagery. Instead, he'd use techniques drawn from memories of sun breathing. The combination of demon abilities and sun breathing principles would create something never seen before. His purifying flames would burn with such intensity that even Gyutaro's poison couldn't overcome them. The battle would end with Tanjiro horrified by how much he enjoyed the violence and power. This brush with losing his humanity would terrify both siblings and create new tensions in their relationship. The Swordsmith Village arc would present Demon Tanjiro's greatest test yet. Against Hantengu's multiple emotion clones, Nezuko would be completely overwhelmed without tactical guidance. But Tanjiro's enhanced demon senses would become crucial for tracking all the clones simultaneously. He could guide Nezuko's strikes with sounds and gestures, coordinating their attacks perfectly. His purifying flames would reveal Hantengu's true body by burning away the demonic concealment. The most shocking moment would come when Tanjiro is exposed to sunlight during their battle. Unlike Nezuko's immunity, Tanjiro would begin to burn. His human willpower alone not enough to save him. But his golden purifying flames would activate instinctively, creating a protective shield against the sun. This moment would prove Tanjiro is evolving into something unprecedented in demon history. A demon whose very nature embodies the sun's purifying power rather than fleeing from it. Muzan would sense this transformation immediately and recognize the ultimate threat to his existence. The final arc would center on Muzan's desperate need to kill Tanjiro before he fully evolves. Nezuko would face the reality that saving her brother might require defeating the Demon King himself. Her journey from desperate sister to warrior capable of facing Muzan would be complete, but the final battle's outcome would hinge on Demon Tanjiro's ultimate transformation. To defeat Muzan permanently, Tanjiro would need to fully accept both his demon nature and his human compassion. His final form would bridge the gap between human and demon, creating a being that embodies purification itself. The golden flames would become so intense they could burn away Muzan's very existence. But achieving this power would mean Tanjiro potentially losing his humanity forever in the process. This role reversal would transform Demon Slayer into a darker story about the cost of protection, where Nezuko must fight desperately to save her brother, while Tanjiro suffers through conscious demonhood, creating an emotional journey that hits even harder than the original tale. Subscribe to explore more impossible anime scenarios that completely transform your favorite stories.